When I started in the county in 1969, there had only been 2 other county superintendents of highways ahead of me. So there was a picture of 2 old white-headed men on the wall. Both of them had been there like 25 and 26 years. Well, when I retired, there was a 3rd white-headed old man's picture on the wall, and I'd been there longer than either one of those 2, so I was only the 3rd one in our county.
I was 28 years old. I think perhaps at that time, I think I was the youngest superintendent of highways in the state of Illinois. So
I know my wife and I'd have breakfast in the morning. She'd say, well, what are you going to do today? And I'd say, well, this is what I got planned, but it'll surprise me if that's what I end up doing.
When I first took over there, we had kind of antiquated graders that were bad, and I was short of grader operators, and so we'd have major storms, and I'd leave my office and go out and wanted to show them how, and they made sure I got the oldest dilapidated grader so I could kind of start upgrading. The guys taught me something there too.
After I was there for a few months, I realized this has to be the greatest highway engineering job in the world, because you're going to be able to assess the conditions of your highways and bridges. If something needs replaced, you send your crew out, survey it, design some plans, supervise the construction of it, and then you've got a maintenance crew to supervise or to take care of the maintenance of it. How great is that?
When I started out, the best things we had were a slide rule and a book of logarithms. So we used logarithms and slide rule. And you had to do a lot of figuring in your head, because with the slide rule you had to carry the decimal place in your head.
The surveying equipment changed drastically. We started out with a 22nd Gurley transit and a self-leveling level, and we've got along fine with that, but now the surveying equipment is fabulous.
when I took office in 1982, there were no personal computers, no PCs, no email, nothing of that sort. Books were kept by hand on paper ledgers.
There was one copying machine in the whole courthouse, and so if you wanted to copy anything, you had to go there. And
There were no cell phones. There were payphones available if you needed to make a call from the field, and I did get myself a pager so that if I was out of the office and there was an emergency, they can get in contact with me.
Equipment was old. It was probably adequate for the most part.
when I came on the scene in Bond County, I think the newest truck was at least 10 years old, and the graders were older than that, and it wasn't very promising.
Well, the biggest challenge, I think, is how to spend your money, because you only have a certain amount of funds to do with, and it's a real challenge then to try to determine what roads need to be repaired, what ones need to be resurfaced, what bridges need to be replaced, and you've only got so many dollars. But the road in front of your constituent's house is the most important county road in the county.
Another thing the '70 Constitution did, it abolished the personal property tax, and in Marion County that amounted to about 30% of the total revenue that came in.
We were in the middle of a recession and had just coming off an inflationary period. That followed shortly thereafter with a couple of increases in motor fuel taxes in the early to mid 1980s. And as a result of that, we were able to make some progress over the next 25 years, over the next quarter of a century.
And yes, I tried some things. We did some salt stabilized roads. That was kind of new at the time. And it worked very satisfactorily for us. I remember I gave a presentation then to the American Road Builders Association about our project we did on our salt stabilization.
When I came to Marion County, there was only one railroad crossing that just had flashing lights. By the time I left, every crossing in Marion County was protected somehow, so I was happy with that, and we did other things, and it's nice to go around and see where I think I made the county a better place for people to live, safer anyway.
One certain township, the guy run for election, and I had heard kind of that he was going to be trouble, and I think his whole goal was he wanted his road blacktopped. He lived on a township road. And I can remember he was no more than elected, and he comes into my office and he says, "I'm a new county board member, and therefore I consider myself your boss," he says. And he says, "I want my road blacktopped."
County engineer still has to know which way the political winds are blowing.
Well, I recall when Dan Walker was the governor, he was putting a big push on, and I think he pushed for Interstate 72, matter of fact, between Decatur and Springfield. And he was wanting to get that done during his term.
I can recall one executive director sort of taking us to task at one point in time, saying, "Can't you people be for something? Do you have to be opposed to everything?" But it just seemed like everything that we saw coming out of Springfield was bad for us.
We bought a new mower, finally got and bought a new mower tractor, and the guy was out mowing, and I wanted to show him what it looked like and what a good job he was doing. And I don't know if you've ever seen steel electric fence posts. They're about, a 1/4 inch, and somebody had piled some along the side of the road, and the weeds and grass had grown up. And just before we drove up, he had hit those with a rotary mower, and they went flying like arrows, and both rear tires of the tractor were flat. So that was not a real good impression,
My chairman of my road and bridge committee lived on one of our county highways, and it was in bad condition, so we had to do quite a bit of work out there. He came into my office one day and he says, "You've got to get your men away from my house." He says, "I'm catching heck from everybody because everybody's working out here on my road and they're not doing anything else." Well, it was the one that needed to repair, but to him, we had a problem because they were after him because they thought he was controlling what we had to do.
If you remember when the computer things were first coming in, and IDOT actually furnished them for us, and one of the big things, we were going to have a paperless society. The computer printout, I don't know why, but it printed a whole bunch of pages, and it stretched at least 10 feet. And I went through my spiel about it was going to save paper, and I said, "Jack, will you," of course he knew, "grab the end of this," and he walked off with it, and I said, "And here's what we have now." I think the IDOT guys were probably ready to throw me out with a pitchfork or something, but
My county is a lot of floodplain, and there's a lot of bridges, and I think in my 10 years terms there, I've built over 200 bridges in that.
the township road districts got a substantial amount of money to build bridges, and that has probably helped rural counties and rural areas more than anything else.
One of our township highway commissioners says, "That bridge has been there, it'll last forever." And but he says, if they say we need to close it, we'll close it and replace it. So they went out, they had a headache ball on a crane, they dropped it down, and the first drop, the whole bridge just collapsed. And his eyes opened up, and he says, "I think maybe they're right. So I think we need to take advantage of these closing the bridges."
I felt that I was most lacking in the area of snow removal and ice control. I really hadn't had any experience in that aspect of public works, primarily in the engineering end of things. So I thought I needed to be educated, so I ran up to the University of Wisconsin and took a snow removal and ice control course to get myself educated. Their consulting meteorologist there predicted the worst winter in Midwestern history. And so I came back and I got my maintenance crew loaded for bear. We bought some new equipment, bought some additional supplies of salt, and took some additional training, and really imposed upon them a greater level of of intensity when it came to the snow removal and ice control. And I don't know if you remember the winter of 1982-83, but it was one of the mildest winters in Midwestern history.
When I got on the job, we had, I think, 2 trucks and one old motor patrol and an inloader that they could put a snowplow on. And I think one of the first major snows we had after I was there, everything was broke down at the same time.
The 78 and 9 winters up there in that area, we had a major, both winters were very tough, snow.
We didn't have the weather forecasting then that we have today, and I remembered listening to the weather the night before. They said 2 to 4 inches of snow. Well, I had to take my tractor into town. I couldn't get into town with anything else because snow was 23 inches deep everywhere. Actually, our first spring meeting, first couple of them, were held in Marion, Illinois. And the idea was that the fall meeting was pretty much business and formal. We had to wear a suit and a tie to all the meetings back in those days. At the spring meeting, we did not wear a tie.
These are important because you may not learn anything in the formal session, but I've never failed to learn something talking to the other people, my associates.
I enjoyed my work with the counties. It was challenging and rewarding, and if I had lived my life over, I'd do the same thing again.
Enjoy it. You're the county engineer. There are good days and there are bad days, but the good days far outnumber the bad days.
You have to listen to people. You can't tell them what needs to be done. If somebody comes in with a problem, listen to them, because some of them have some really good ideas.
Serve the profession well and serve this association well. You'll find no finer group of people to associate with than you have available to you through your fellow county engineers. It's been a great group of people. It's been a great association. It's been a strong association. Sometimes we win in our battles and sometimes we lose, but overall that friendship and that professional relationship that we have as an association, is second to none.